Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live October 30th, 2019, the Halloween Eve edition. I'm very disappointed to see that my co-host, well, I'm not disappointed to see my co-host. That's fantastic news. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I am disappointed you're not in a costume.
Oh, yeah. It didn't even cross my mind, and it should have. I took my grandson out, and we got him the Into the Spider-Verse costume yesterday. It was so awesome. We had such a great time. We went to a couple costume stores to find it, but they had one left on the rack, and it was his size. And we remembered that for his 4th birthday, which was like 5 years ago, a bunch of us dressed up as superheroes for his birthday, and we still have somewhere a men's size large, which is my size, Spider-Man costume at his parents' house, at my daughter's house. And so he's like, come on, Papa, you got to dress as Spider-Man and I'll be the Spider-Verse character. And so we were all excited about it, and it never even crossed my mind today to throw that on for you guys.
So you're telling me, Steve, that you have a adult Spider-Man costume you fit into?
Well, apparently there is one floating around here about 4 houses down the street. And we'll see if I can fit into it. Been packing it on lately, so maybe not.
Thumbs up if you want to see Steve in his Spider-Man costume.
Oh, man. Sure about that? Well, the thing is, it's supposed to be pouring rain and windy all day and all night tomorrow. And we moved to a neighborhood where there's supposed to be tons of trick-or-treaters. It's like, I was told it's like E.T., the movie E.T. Remember when all the kids went out? But it's set from 6 to 8 p.m. and the streets are just filled with trick-or-treaters, and it's supposed to be dumping rain. So next week I'll probably be excited to put the costume on and put it to good use.
All right. Well, we'll keep that in mind. That is a bummer about the rain. Ironically, our forecast here in Seattle, next 10 days, there is no rain in the forecast. It's pretty rare this time of year. It's somewhat rare any time of the year, but especially this time of year.
Yeah.
But if you're just tuning in, this is not the show where we talk about costumes, even if Steve has an adult Spider-Man costume just off camera that he promises he'll put on just a little bit later in the show. This is not about weather. I am actually wearing a little bit of a costume dressed as Alfalfa today.
Nice.
I actually considered pausing the show and running upstairs from some hair gel, but then I decided if you're watching the show because you like the way my hair looks, well, I just don't think that applies to a single person. So that's all.
I was an advocate for just leaving it alone and seeing how many comments there would be in the live chat, but now you've talked about it, so nobody's going to bring it up.
No, I think you've invited discussion. This is the show where we talk about photography news, new gear. We share your photos that you've sent in to us and talk about them in Lightroom and sometimes Photoshop as well. We've got some interesting news this week. Just announced today is a new Mavic drone. This is the Mavic 2 Pro.
I'm excited to hear about that one.
So teaser, there's a reason why this scale is sitting on the table. I'll talk more about that and my opinion on the drone, and 2 things about the drone right up front that I'll tell you. 1, I pre-ordered it this morning. 2, I'm really close to canceling that pre-order. I'll share more soon.
Just change the ship to address to Cincinnati, Ohio, and we'll just call it even.
Well, that's one of the things that I thought about talking about on this show, because Steve, we've always kind of been teasing. You've always been interested in a drone, but I think there's a couple deal breakers that are just going to...
There's one that I'm trying to wrap my head around just when I read the bullet points of what's available. It all looks good, but no RAW bummed me out.
Yeah, that, and there's 2 other pieces I've since learned that I'm really, disappointed in. But you have to kind of balance that with its weight and its price. But we got other things to talk about too. I did finally get out to shoot astrophotography with my phone. It feels funny to say that, but I specifically went out testing the astrophotography mode. The way it works is amazing. And man, if they put this into our cameras in the future, wow, that's cool. So I want to talk a little bit about that and tell my coyote story. I also want to talk about Photoshop's new subject selection tool that has been teased ahead of the Adobe Max conference, and they give you some tips and tricks for selecting with the current tools in Adobe Photoshop. And as I said, we're going to be talking about your photos that you have submitted. You being most of those folks who are in our chat room, you are pen members. You're part of the Photo Enthusiast Network. You you make this show possible through your membership. And we hope that this small piece of this kind of that we give back to you is part of the value. If you're watching this and you're not a pen member, there is just fantastic resources, hundreds of hours of educational videos, articles, new content added each week. Steve and I, we just had a nice long team meeting this morning with some really exciting changes to the site that are going to be coming over the next couple of months that just really got us excited. So stand by for that and consider joining if you're not already a member. For sure. Yeah. I don't know. There's so much that we can't say at this point because it's in its infancy state of new content and basically layout and all that stuff. But it is exciting to think about what's coming up. And so stay tuned for sure. Yep. Nikki nicely says, if you're not a pen member, you are totally missing out. I mean, it is a fantastic resource. It really is. We're not just saying that because it's part of the way we make our living. We're really proud. We've put our heart and soul into this, and we're really proud of what we offer and love the growth we've seen in our members. And, I think one of the things is it's tough. There is so much awesome free content out there. But what I run into time and time again when I'm looking for content on a variety of subjects, the other night we were trying to put our louvered closet doors back together. And we had a couple extra pieces in our hand and we were like, what do these go to? I don't know. We got on YouTube and we found the answer. The trick though is it took us several videos before we got to one that the person knew what they were talking about, clearly showed all of the pieces and described it in nice detail. There's so much stuff on YouTube where you have to watch several minutes before you realize this person doesn't know what they're talking about, or the topic doesn't match you, or the way their teaching style is. So one of the things that if you like what you see here, if you like what you see on my channel, the pen membership site is very, very similar. And so it wastes less of your time, basically. That's a way to say it. One-stop shop. Yeah. What else? Oh, well, the show is partially brought to you by Squarespace as well, which I think Squarespace is the best place to build a website. I've now moved Photorec.tv to Squarespace, saving me hundreds of dollars a month and no headaches. I don't wake up in the morning worried about having a log of bot attacks that I have to make sure I spend more money on securing all of the WordPress stuff. Not the badmouth WordPress. It is fantastic as well. But Squarespace just makes it so much easier, in my opinion, to upload beautiful images, have a gorgeous gallery or a storefront. And their marketing system now, I sent out my email this morning about the new drone and the fact that we were doing this live show. Squarespace makes it really easy to do that. You can save 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace.com/PhotorecTV. I got to pull up the show notes. Roy, thank you for putting those show notes together. He wants me to tell you all that Chris and I have booked a personal vacation. That's one of the reasons why I jumped on this drone this morning, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Oh, I was kind of wondering what prompted you to buy that, other than, it was exciting and it was a good price, but yeah, it makes a little sense. Yeah, you always look for an excuse to be like, oh, this vacation, I need X, Y, and Z to really enjoy it. It's totally BS, but sometimes you use that, like, I need a new suitcase, or I need a new pair of sandals. Like last week we were talking about my daughter's wedding coming up in January, and it's a perfect excuse to go buy a point and shoot camera. That's right. So other great news is that I am offering 2 tours to Zion National Park next fall, almost exactly a year from now. And tour 1 sold out. Tour 2 still has some space available to it. And there is a link to all of the show notes right down below. And in that link to those show notes is a link to the Zion National Park. It's got all of the details. The highlight of this trip, it's just kind of a 3.5-day trip. is hiking the Narrows, which is just one of the coolest hikes on the planet. And, you know, I say in the description, that's not hyperbole. That is truly one of the coolest hikes on the planet. You walk through the river, cliffs rise thousands of feet above you. There's little patches where the sun comes through and lights up trees. So many opportunities for amazing photography in there. Plus, it's just a really cool adventure. That's just one piece of the trip, though. There's lots more with sunrise, sunset, astrophotography options. I've been to Zion now. I think I'm coming up on 8 times in the last 3 years. And I love every single moment I spend in that park. It's just fantastic. So if you're interested in that, link in the show notes right down below. I teased this in the headline. So last week I had to come up with a title for the show, and I'm in talks with Bay Photo to print some really big photos using 40 by 60.
That's pretty big.
It's pretty big. I'm excited. I'm really excited about this. I'm going to talk about it in a video. Hopefully it all comes together. Still working with them. The A7R4 has that pixel shift technology, which lets you create a 200 megapixel file. I have a lot of ones where I don't really see a big difference from a single 61 megapixel file, but then I have one of the city of Seattle with Mount Rainier in the background, and the super res version is just gorgeous. So nice. And so to be able to print that really large, talk about the differences you might see. How large do you have to print to really start to see a difference between a 61 megapixel and a 206 megapixel, 204, 260? I don't even remember what the high res version is, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm curious to see. And so we're going to do some test samples and hopefully get a couple big, beautiful prints out of it. So that's what I wanted to tease about that. And we love working with Bay Photo. Their products are again and again just fantastic. And we had a member that was in our Facebook group earlier this week, really disappointed with a print they had gotten from somebody else. And, you know, among encouragement and some tips and tricks for prepping that print for a little bit better also was just to go get it printed someplace better. Like, was
that Adi's post?
That's right. Yeah.
You're referring to? Yeah, I commented on that a little earlier. I think it was today or yesterday. Well, I didn't comment on it. I had been watching it, and then she saw I had printed a bunch of photos through Bay. I tagged them on my professional Facebook page, and she had asked me what I had printed on, and so we kind of talked about that a little bit. But yeah, I was reminded of that when we were going to talk about Bay Photo. I mean, I look, as I told Adi, I've been using them since high school. In my film days, I bought all my film there, did all my processing there. Aside from the stuff that I did in the darkroom, but all my color processing was done through Bay. And it was really cool to take a break from photography for a number of decades, really, and come back to it in the digital world and find out that not only were they still in business, but they were thriving and they were starting to ship their stuff all over the world. So they're not a small-time operation. They're huge. And you go to Imaging USA and you just see this massive booth. I mean, they really are pros. And, you know, they really still, I mean, we have contacts there that we talk to, and it's like dealing with your local shop, but they're worldwide. I mean, and they've been so good to us and to Penn in sponsoring our image reviews and stuff like that. And the winner gets an image from Bay and they're always happy with it. And Mallory, our contact there, has just been phenomenal. So kudos to them. I don't know if anybody's watching this, but can't say enough good things about them. And anybody that wants to print, I just send them straight there. I don't get anything for that. I just fully believe that they do the best job out there.
Yeah. And Adi's pointing out that she ordered their sample metal set, which is a really cool, affordable way to kind of get a feeling for the different sizes and finishes. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right, so Adi, we're excited to follow along on that, and are looking forward to seeing you much happier with the results from Bay Photo.
Yeah, I think she will be.
Real quick, Penn members, you got a Tuesday tip in your box earlier this week, portrait posing using the triangle rule. So that's part of those Tuesday tips. Every single week, you get a new article in your inbox, and also it's posted to the site, so you can go back. hundreds of weekly articles on a variety of topics, everything from figuring out what your depth of field should be for a certain image, to how to start a business, to how to kind of come up with a logo for your business, to portrait posing using the triangle rule. Tons of great content.
Yeah.
And Steve, you got a new video this week, fine-tuning your virtual mat.
Yeah. I hope I didn't rub anybody the wrong way on that one. That wasn't the intent. We just, if you guys have watched our image reviews, you'll find that a lot of my comments end up being around virtual mats. And I say it every time. It's your virtual mats look fine when they come in, but I thought it would be important to do just a fine-tuning tutorial, because there's just some things I want people to think about when they're creating their virtual mat. And I say all the time, like, you really want the viewer to focus in on a finished photograph and what's going on in the photograph, not the art of the mat itself. The mat looks nice and it finishes things off and it stands out. So a lot of people will be drawn to that. But ultimately it's to complement the photograph. So I said this at the beginning of the tutorial, if you haven't watched the original virtual mat tutorial, which is one that we've done almost 2 years ago now, but it was very popular, go back and watch that, learn how to do it, because in this new one, I whip through making the mat, which I'm assuming that the viewer of this particular tutorial already knows how to do, and then it takes it to the next level of just how to fine tune that. So hopefully it was helpful, and we'll see. I'd love to hear from people or see some examples of what you're doing. The Facebook site seems to be the best place to post all that stuff, by the way.
Yeah. Nice. And the Pen monthly review image went out, which we mentioned Bay Photos a few moments ago. They are they sponsor that and provide incredible prizes to the winner each month. Steve usually sit down with David and Allie and evaluate the images, that pick your top 5 and then pick a winner. What else do you want to say about that?
About the image reviews?
Yeah.
Well, we were really late on getting September out, and we deeply apologize for that. The past couple of months, the thing is, it's kind of getting on the back end of an extremely busy year with tours, especially everything that David and Allie have been doing. So trying to get everybody together, it's almost like crunch time, and we're trying to make up for lost time during the year with our families and getting ready for the holidays and stuff. And so, there's just been challenges at times on getting everybody together to be able to record. So deepest apologies for September being so late, but that, as you said, that is rolled out. And then we're now working on a record date for October, which the McKays leave for the Smoky Mountains tour. It's either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. It's a relatively short tour. Mm-hmm. Actually, it is a very short tour. I think it's just a weekend. And then when they get back, we'll get that recorded. So apologies for that. I hope it's worth the wait, though. Tons of learning opportunities, even if you're not involved in it. Just check it out, because there might be some pearls of wisdom that you can take from it. And, we love doing those for you guys. I personally really, really enjoy that, and would love to hear your feedback if you want us to keep that going, because our plan is to keep doing that.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So just, was trying to share my screen subtly to get ready to jump in, because I know some people are watching this. They really want to hear my thoughts on the new Mavic Mini. So I'm going to give those thoughts with a little bit of context and background. Then we'll jump into the Lightroom tips. Then we'll jump into the rest of the gear news, including my thoughts on using this astrophotography mode and whether or not that makes it worth buying. But it is very cool. It's very, very cool how it works. I want to talk about that.
Do you have any colors other than pink?
Well, okay, the case is pink, but the phone is orange. And you're jealous of that, aren't you? Ouch.
No. It's the same.
Is that orange?
Well, I guess that's a pinkish orange.
Salmon, which here in the Northwest, we're all about the salmon.
I like what Pixel did with the Panda stuff.
Right, Tim? Yeah.
The black and white phones that they have. I don't remember which model.
I don't know what color you call that.
That's kind of, I gotta say, man, I'm a sucker for little splashes of color like that, or something.
I thought you were going to give me crap, because that's clearly pink.
Oh, it is? Oh, it looks white from here. Sorry.
No, it's It looks pink to me. It's pink. And it's pink on the inside too, just like a
Coral.
salmon.
Somebody, Nikki Metzler said coral. That
Coral.
fits perfectly. It's a coral.
Again, I don't know what living in the Northwest. I don't know what coral is, but I know what salmon is. And this looks like some salmon. So we'll talk about that. But okay, so the Mavic Mini was announced. The headline feature is that it is a 249 gram drone. Now you say, well, why are we? Who cares exactly what its weight is? Because it comes in underneath the FAA registration of 250 grams. Drones that weigh more than 250 grams have to be registered with the FAA. Now, that's not such a big deal as some people make it out to be, because it's like a 3-minute process. You go on, you put your name in there, you pay them $5 and you're registered. They give you a number. You're supposed to write it on your drone. But what it does really kind of mean is that it's seen by most localities as more of a toy category. And so it's really not regulated much. And when you travel worldwide, it's very likely you won't run into any issues in many places with people saying, hey, you can't fly that, serious drone, because it's more of toy-like. But it does have a 30-minute fly time. It doesn't have 4K, but it does shoot 2.7K. I'll share some of my stats here that I started to for a second.
So I have a question, though, about that weight escaping FAA registration.
Yeah.
Does that relate at all to what you do with the footage commercially? So if I was to take that out and shoot a home with it, and I use that footage to give to one of my clients, am I okay to do that because I never had to register the drone in the first place?
That's a great question. And Roy was saying he was seeing some people asking similar things. My understanding is no. If you're using a drone for commercial use, it doesn't matter its weight anymore. That is commercial use. You need to be permitted to do that. And that's the FAA Part 107. That's kind of what I figured. But. Yeah. So, I say all that. And at the same time, I don't want to encourage anybody to do wrong, but it doesn't seem like, really people are getting cracked down on for, if you fly it around a home now and then. But then, of course, you can always have the realtor down the street or the other guy that does that down the street saying, hey, Steve, you're not permitted. I'm turning you in. But so far, the only thing I've heard anybody who hasn't broken the law, this is regulation, not law, right? Those are different, is just a letter of like, hey, you need to do this. That's all. But I put the scale out on the table just to give you an idea of how light 250 grams is. It's in grams mode right now. Here is the controller to the Mavic 2 Pro. You can see how small it is. And I put it on here and it weighs.
Toby, can you make your screen bigger so we can see that?
Oh, yeah. So I guess I'll do, what will I do? Me for a second. Just me for a second. I'm important. This controller weighs 313 grams. This controller weighs significantly more than the drone. A phone, here's my Pixel 4 XL in a case. That weighs 219. So you've seen the pictures.
200 of those grams is the coral case.
Yeah, I know.
Or the salmon.
So you've seen this picture of it here in the hand. Not only does it fit nicely in the hand, but it also basically weighs the same as a large cell phone in a beautiful coral salmon case.
That's pretty amazing.
So, but it still gives you, 2.7 HD, that's quad HD, with a 3-axis gimbal. That's better than the Spark gives you. 30 minutes of flight time, that's impressive. Stream HD video from up to 2.5 miles away. And this $399 price includes the controller and the flight battery. Now, I don't have a picture of the controller here, but if you look, come back to I'm small, but you can see this. There's a screen with a bunch of readout information, not a screen of what the drone sees, but a readout. On the new controller, you don't have that. It's the much more simplified kind of Spark controller. And let's see. $499 gets you 2 spare batteries, a multi-battery charger and holder, prop guards, cool carrying case. I think that's worth the extra $100. But here are some issues. We don't have 4K. For that size, I can be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
We don't have RAW. That's disappointing. You can't create a little DNG here. Now, that is disappointing. I'm trying to say it's not a big deal. You can shoot nice JPEGs. I do shoot JPEG and RAW out of here. but I almost always find that I work with the RAW a little bit more, and it can look a little bit better than the JPEG did. So I like that. This is also a bigger sensor, though. When I shot with my original Mavic, which is sitting back there gathering dust, you know, the JPEGs were fine a lot. But we also are listed 17 miles per hour as the max wind speed it can fight against. That makes sense, being so lightweight. I think that could feel quite limiting in some situations.
Where is what's the max wind speed for like the Mavic Pro?
That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I suspect it's up around 30-ish miles per hour.
Okay.
I know I have personally flown it. It yells at me and says, "Hey, this is really windy. Please land soon," but it still flies. As long as the max wind that's blowing isn't faster than the drone is capable of, and in sport mode it's capable of about 40 miles an hour, then I feel pretty safe. I've flown this all over. But see, the thing is, 17 mile per hour, I would not want to take that to Antarctica. I would not want to take it to Alaska this summer. Sorry. Those situations, very quickly, you can find yourself in winds. It's a 15, 20 mile an hour breeze is pretty common, out there in the world. So that's limiting. And no manual white balance. This is pretty big in some situations. I've got footage that I shot that causes, like, I'm not going to use that. Dummy, you left auto white balance on, and it changes so much through the course of the video. Like if you point down at the ground, it's very warm, and then you come up and it's got a cool sky, or vice versa. And that's not really correctable in post. Not easily, not with the amount of work you want to do. So that's pretty limiting. And no manual shutter speed control during video. I'm really curious to see what kind of manual controls you have during photos. I suspect it may be just exposure compensation, which, I don't really need more than that. You can't change the shutter. You can't change the aperture anyway. It's a fixed aperture. So that's a lot of negatives, but $399. It's coming with DJI Smarts, and it's got all of those fun little modes in it, plus object tracking. It doesn't have obstacle avoidance. If you look at this picture, do I only have the one stupid picture? Yeah, you can see it though. On the side here, it looks very similar, like there's a little camera up there and it has obstacle avoidance. It doesn't actually.
That's a real bummer because that is technology that seems to be making its way into all of their higher end drones. All sides, right? At least front and back obstacle avoidance. And you would think that a lot of the people that are going to be buying these, they're going to be first-time drone flyers or entry level into the drone world. And those are the people that really need the obstacle avoidance. And it seems like, I'd rather pay an extra $50 or $100 for the drone to be able to have obstacle avoidance on there. It's a good peace of mind, if nothing else. It's just a bummer that they left that out.
It may be simply because they couldn't afford the weight of more processors. I think they wanted to hit that than the cost. So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, for anybody watching this who's never flown a drone, these DJI drones are really easy to fly with or without obstacle avoidance. Obviously, obstacle avoidance helps you from running in, helps you, because it doesn't keep you. I've demonstrated that several times from running into things. But it would be nice. It would be nice that it's in there. And I also think that they wanted some differentiation. So this might come back to what you're saying, Steve, with hitting price and also differentiation of Mavic Mini, the Air, and the Pro levels. Yeah. So we have that set up now with these three. So I think that this is going to be a great first drone for some people at $399 price tag. That's really affordable. Yeah. It's going to perform well in a lot of cases, but if you're interested in it, just know of those drawbacks. Tim's asking, could they do a firmware update at some point that allows RAW? Absolutely, they could. Very, very easily. Yes.
Yeah, would they?
Will they?
They tend to just introduce something new, and you got to buy a whole new system. I find it interesting that DJI seems to be just taking all of Apple's names and applying them to their drones now. The Mini, the Air, and the Pro.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah. Here's some. It is so nice and small. So why did I pre-order it? Well, I love I think there are times where I want a drone shot, but I don't need 4K. I don't need to carry this big, heavy thing along with the controller with it together. And think about a trip to Thailand, which is a vacation for me. I will want to collect some photos and video, but I'm thinking my Sony with one lens, a GoPro, and a tiny drone sets me up for really good success. And there are no drawbacks right now that I see that bother me enough that I'm going to cancel it, but check in with me at the end of the show too. I don't know.
You want to hear my opinion?
Yes, I do, Steve.
I say you keep the drone. That is awesome. I think you'll find a place for it. I think you'll get tons of use out of it. You may find that you end up using that a lot more than your Mavic Pro.
Yeah.
But I would go easy on the cameras on your Thailand vacation with your girl. Not too many cameras. Enjoy your time on the beach. Sip a couple Mai Tais or whatever you want. Watch the monkeys run around. And just chill out, dude.
Yeah, I definitely am looking forward to that as well. So that's why I said the Sony plus one lens. Just one, Steve.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. All right. I got to give that to you because I've seen your camera bag explode whenever we walk into a hotel room. So that's good.
Baby steps.
That's a big step, dude.
Yeah. Ursula's asking, what lens am I taking to Thailand? So the vacation we booked is to Thailand. It's scheduled for next February, end of February. So we got a ways off still. The lens that I'm thinking is just the Tamron 28-75. Small, lightweight, covers basically what I want.
Is that the newest one that you bought?
No, the very newest is the 17-28, their wide angle version, which I like, despite the occasional totally autofocus give up. I'm really hoping Tamron updates, firmware update sometime soon to fix that. But otherwise, yeah, pretty good. Mm-hmm. Pretty good. Okay. So I think if you got more questions about the Mavic Mini, let me know. I do think I'm going to keep my pre-order for now, if for no other reason than to talk knowledgeably about it the moment it arrives and share more information with you all. That's the genius of my job, in that I can totally justify purchases don't necessarily work for me. I can share it with you all. But then my bank account is like, what's wrong with you, dude? You don't have that money to be buying all the time. So somewhere in there, but so
we all have as photographers, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's supposed to start shipping November 11th. I did put my pre-order in at like 6:50 a.m. Pacific time. That was 50 minutes after they went live. So I'm hoping it arrives shortly after that date, and I'll be sharing more with you all then.
So speaking of equipment, I want to pose this out to the chat room and to you, Toby, and I'm going to single out Brian Scanlon because I've been doing a lot of looking at Fuji. And this is just a follow-up from last week's discussion where we're talking about point-and-shoot cameras and stuff like that. I would love to know if anybody has any experience. I've watched some reviews on it. I'm really impressed with this. It's probably my front runner, and it's not what you saw coming. The Ryko GR3. I would like to know if anybody has experience with that as a point-and-shoot, because that thing looks awesome to just stick in your pocket, take to a wedding, get some street shots. So anyway, Brian, have you tried it out? The Ryko GR3. The GR3 just came out. It's replacing the GR2, which had a great reputation too. But Ryko, not a lot of people have been playing with those. So
no, not a lot. I just Googled real quick. I could only think of one YouTuber off the top of my head that I knew covered it, and he's a little guy. I see
there's a lot of people that covered it. DP Review did, and a bunch of others. But you don't see it out there much.
No, you really don't. In fact, never, ever, ever have I seen one in the wild. Any of Ryko, 3, 2, or 1.
I couldn't tell you. I've never really looked at them. But
yeah. Brian thinks I should bring the 100 to 400 along. Brian, are you trying to break the back? I want to travel super duper light. I want to be one of those millennials, or now apparently they call them Visco girls for the girls.
What are they called?
Visco girls.
What does that mean?
I learned that on TikTok.
Dude, in between finding Pokemons?
No. But I mean, I want to be one of those people that I always see when I'm traveling, that they have this small backpack and that's all of their stuff. That's it.
I know.
That's it. They don't have some giant checked bag. They don't have some giant bag stuffed full, as Steve said, a camera gear that explodes when you pull the zippers back open because it's just like been compressed in there. No, I want to travel. What I put on my back, I want it to be light and easy and has everything I need. Does that mean I'm going to be wearing the same pair of underwear the whole time? You betcha.
Hey, you can get 4 days out of one pair. Frontward, backward, inside out, frontward, inside out, backward. You know, you can do it.
Yeah. I mean, Chris doesn't mind. We've been together for years now. She knows. This isn't a surprise.
I'm sure she doesn't mind.
David Carr's in chat. Hi, David Carr. We should have a 3-person show at some point.
We should. What's up, Mr. Carr?
That would be great.
Right?
So we'll talk about that. Nikki says Visco Girl is like the new Valley Girl. That might be true. I actually really don't know totally what I'm talking about when I talk about TikTok and Visco Girl.
So somebody put Visco as an acronym, VSCO. Is it an acronym for something? Does it stand for something?
Well, it's that film emulation. So in that site that started as an alternative to Instagram, really. To me, it's where millennials who travel a lot and, you have like the cute blonde or the cute brunette dressed in the hat and the camera around her neck, staring off at some epic scene. Usually it's Banff Lake or something like that. The same image over and over again. So it's that group of people are now described as Visco girls. I don't know why. There's men too. So I don't know what you call them if people can enlighten us. So we'll see.
Interesting, but fascinating. I feels like I'm honestly learning something new about social media or groups of people every single day these days.
Yeah, there's a lot, and it really started to make me. When I get on TikTok, I feel old right away, but it's fascinating. Have you been on TikTok yet? It's fascinating.
Yeah, I haven't. I've been witness to it when you and I were hanging out on the New England tour. You showed it to me, but
that's right.
That's the only experience I've had with it that I know of. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So our viewership has gone up a little bit. Let's actually give them something useful. Let's get back to something useful, as we like to do. Let's dive in.
Up? Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. Oh, I just went back down. And I need to share the screen again. I'm sharing the whole screen so we can dive into our Lightroom section. So everybody's seeing Lightroom now?
Yep.
All right, great. So this is the section of the show where
I should clarify. We see your Lightroom and our two screens. Is that what we want? Or
you know what? Let's take ourselves off of this. You think I would learn things, don't you? You think I would learn something.
Oh, man, we did that exact same thing last week, didn't we?
That's why we kept ourselves on this. Yeah. That's why.
Sorry, folks. That I take a lot of responsibility for that one because that was my idea to get us off of there.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. Okay, so we will be on the screen so that you can hear us. I might try to figure that out in the future since we kind of just take up real estate that we don't need. But maybe you read this. I was just basically reading this. Ursula shot this at the Cruising the Coast event. This is a 1951 Studebaker. And what I was really talking about, and I can just distill down into one thing that I think you did really well, Ursula, is that you asked the owner of this car to move it, I assume, to this location because it made for a better background. And that's huge. That's going to set you up for such better success. It was something that I did in shooting weddings. Sure, when you're working with the groom, the bride and the groom, yeah, you always move them to a spot that's perfect for background, for better light. But even with people at cocktail hour, sometimes you could be like, hey, just step forward a little bit so that they weren't directly under some overhead light that was giving them raccoon eyes, or, just those little changes. That can make a huge difference in your photography. And so right here, we've got this beautiful coast shot with that sandy white beach, a nice couple of palm trees, some dramatic clouds. I think you've done a great job here.
Yeah, this is a totally cool shot. It's I will admit that it's pretty small on my screen, so I'm not able to see a lot of the intricate details of it, but I love how the purple in the car is really standing out, and you see all the detail in the shadows underneath. So there's nothing that has just been lost in the dark areas, and it's obviously a pretty bright photograph. The sky I would maybe consider. It's kind of hard for me to tell the color, but I don't know. I almost want to see it a little warmer. You got all the light, cool tones at the bottom, and then up in the sky with those dark clouds, I'd like to see it maybe just warmed up a little bit. It just might be less of a cold sort of scene. I think it could look really cool, but still, I think the way it's presented looks totally cool. I don't have a whole lot of suggestions about composition or the way it was processed necessarily. Ursula, I think you did a really nice job.
I agree. So you already had worked on the sky a little bit here, Ursula. You've sent us a DNG, so very nice. So you had this graduated filter that you had thrown on here. I just took Steve's suggestions and warmed the temp up a little bit.
Maybe take the shadows up. It's kind of heavy. I get it. There's some clouds, maybe some rain back there or something, but I kind of just want it to be a little bit brighter, because what's happening is the darkness in the clouds and the coolness of the clouds, especially if it was warmer or something, it might not be the case, but they start to compete for your eye's attention from the purple car. And you really want the viewer to be focused in on that car and almost have the sky show some drama, but sort of disappear out of sight as you're gazing on the main subject of the story here.
I agree. And maybe I just made some edits that flattened it a little bit too much. But what I did was, as you said, brought the shadows up. Didn't see a whole lot of change when I did that. Then brought the blacks up to really just kind of minimize those darker clouds. Brought the texture down and brought the dehaze down a little bit to just kind of soften. What I don't like is how it's hitting that.
You want that palm from the palm.
Yeah. So we're just going to come in here, and we want those to still stay sharp. We should be able to click on them without too much over. We have auto mask turned on, so that should stand out still nicely. And you might even maybe just bring this back up a little bit. Let's go back to edit mode, and it doesn't have to come down so far because I like some of the detail back there. We don't need to wash the pier out as much. It looks pretty nice.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
I just real quick, if we just bring this up, I was gonna think about brightening it a little bit.
I don't think so. There's a lot of hot spots in that car, and what I like that Ursula did is she managed to brighten it up enough, but you see all the lines and the sort of the texture and detail in there. She didn't blow things out too much. So a lot of kudos to the way that was processed. That's fine tuning.
Yeah, nice, nicely done, Ursula. Let's move on. Chris Bartel has this fall colors. She just joined us on our New England color workshop, but she was in Massachusetts for a week or two before she joined us, and this looks like one of those spots. This is a pretty nice spot. I love. We're always looking for having some depth to an image, and this very nicely has these kind of foreground interesting elements in this left third. Let me just turn rule of thirds on. I have. There we go. And then we've got our right kind of thirds, kind of more of background detail information. I feel like what's going on in the sky is a question we get very commonly when we're out shooting is, what do I do by the sky? It's just turning to be flat gray. It might, to our eyes in some of these situations, still be blue. It might be bright enough. What do you think, Steve?
So I was going to offer two suggestions here. The sky, immediately when I saw this image, it's gorgeous. I love the way she processed the colors on the trees and stuff. But there's two things that I would do to handle the sky. The first would be to do just a really horizontal crop and bring it way down and crop the sky out. It'll totally change the look of the picture, and really just your eye will be totally focused on the fall colors in the trees if you just eliminate the sky altogether. And in my opinion, that's still a beautiful scene. And I like the that ratio there. I like that really wide ratio. I know we have some brightness at the bottom, which is the sky being reflected in the water. But, you know, I think just kind of isolating the more softer neutral colors of the image overall is going to just, oh, that looks good, with leaving the brightness kind of as a U shape at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's one way to handle it. The other thing you could do, Chris, is go up into your original crop and do a you can do a graduated filter and then turn on masking luminance and just select the sky and alter that, maybe, you know, add some blue tone to it or cool it down and see if there's any blue that's found in there without, you know, messing with the trees.
Yeah. So what Steve's saying is we threw that mask over it, which you can see here. It's applied equally across the whole image. Then we can come down to the luminance and say, but limit yourself to the kind of brighter areas of this image. And now you can see that it's peeled back off. What you do have to be careful about, though, is how it clips up there just a little bit. And so then you can maneuver that range a little bit more so it starts to pull off those. This range is from dark to bright or black to white. And you can also adjust the smoothness and see how sharp the edge is or how faded it is. You can almost think of the smoothness like a feathering amount. So let's show luminance mask back off and see what we got. You know, I mean, we need some work right along the edges, but I think just adding just that little bit of a blue cast up there can really help. The other thing you could do is say, well, what if it looked a little bit warmer? No, I like the blue.
Yeah, the other thing, Toby, is if you center out that temperature slider, go down to color at the bottom and click on color, and then, you know, select the light blue one. That'll take it down to 50% saturation and see what that gives you. If it's, well, it might be okay.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with warmth. I play around with color sometimes, and then I mess with the temperature.
Got it.
Afterwards, if you really want to apply more of, you know, more saturation of a color.
Yeah.
That's one thing to do. There was a comment. Brian had mentioned cloning out the bush that's on the lower right-hand portion, and I totally agree with that. I think it's just one of those cases where there's enough of it showing that it's kind of the start of another story that ends abruptly off frame. You can't get a good sense of exactly what's going on. Is that a whole chunk of land over there? Does the bush just end? You know, you don't know. So I would spend a little time cleaning that up and getting that out of there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, nice shot, Chris. And also, you know, when you're out there in the field, this is shot at 80. There's some really neat other alternative compositions here, I think, that could minimize the sky. For instance, just a reflection of these two trees with their fantastic colors down in the water. So a vertical composition there, or a wider composition that shoots over top of this little stick in the water, or big stick, that kind of gets that reflection back there. I love these reflected colors, but this guy across here is a little distracting because my eye keeps hitting that dark shape.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, let's move on. Ursula's got another one from what was this thing called? Classic Cars.
Yeah.
And looks like that this might be a pano. Let's see. Did you write it? This image is a result of a vertical panorama. Is there any way to fill the sky using Lightroom? Nice, Ursula. I wonder how many vertical shots it is.
I'm so excited to see this because I've been starting to talk about this a lot more on tours when we're talking about taking panos. Everybody wants to do a horizontal pano, but I think these vertical panoramas can be really cool, especially if you don't have a wide lens, kind of using what you got.
Yep.
I will say before Toby gets started on this, because you can probably fix that, Toby, with no problem in Lightroom. But I will tell you that if this was my shot, I would take it straight into Photoshop. I would fix that sky. It would fix it in a heartbeat. And then I would actually create a little bit more canvas over on that right-hand side to give a little bit more breathing room from the end of the bumper, the rear bumper of the car, and the edge of the frame. So I don't know if you wanted to get into that, Toby, but that would be my quick fix for what's going on there.
Well, let's do this. Let's jump into Photoshop because I agree, Steve. Anytime you really need to make content, Photoshop is the place to go. We could, while we're waiting for it to open up in Photoshop, we could hit the Q tool in here, make this just big enough. So this is the spot removal tool, and just kind of paint. Oops, it opened, but let's ignore that for a minute. Let's stay in Lightroom for just a minute. And then just kind of paint down along. The spot removal tool doesn't have to be a spot. It can be a line, and I am being wiggly on purpose so that the edge is a little rough. And then let's say clone, and it's totally failing. Why is it totally failing? Opacity is 100. Feathering maybe is too high. Let's turn the feathering down. Well, this is why it's better to go to Photoshop. But why is it completely failing? Let's try again real quick.
That's so odd. I've never seen.
I missed part of it. Weird. I have no answer for that. So it's good that I preemptively opened Photoshop. This should be pulling from here. And with clone, it shouldn't even try to match that brightness value. So,
did you try heal?
Heal. Let's just try heal for a second. That was what it was on at first. Let's just paint another one on. And it's identical.
Wow, that's so odd.
This is odd, Ursula. All right, well, we open Photoshop. So we come over here. I'd hit the L key for the lasso, and I would just similar. I'm creating kind of a rough outline. You don't have to match it exactly. In fact, I think it's better if you don't. And then we can go edit. Edit, content aware fill. This little box that pops up, you could unpaint the car because it's asking for where to sample from, but I rarely do that. It seems smart enough usually. And hit OK, or it'll give us, there it goes. It gives preview. Still got a hint of it showing up, but let's say OK.
The patch tool or the clone stamp tool.
Yeah.
I mean, on my screen, it's hard to tell. It's a little small, so I can't see if there's any residue like lines or something.
There's just a tiny bit. So I'm holding down. I switched to the stamp tool, the S key. This is the clone stamp tool. So now I can sample. This is very similar to the spot removal tool, except you sample first, and then you can just kind of paint down the side there. You can also hit the J key, which gets you the patch tool, and then that's similar too. There's so many ways to do this. You can select that, and then you can drag and drop, and it will select from that area and try to make it match up as well. I feel like it's a little funky.
Yeah, that really applied a bunch of lines to it. Usually, just a tip for you guys, if you're using the patch tool, I usually try to select an area that is not right next to where you want to be, unless it's just a very small space. But I try to find a similar color someplace else, though, because our eye is automatically drawn to repeating patterns. even if it looks kind of random, we will find repeating patterns of things. And so we want to select from an area that may not be right next to it using the batch tool.
Yeah. So a little bit better there. Now, while we're here, we've got the new Adobe tools coming that include subject selection. And I just want to show that real quick. I don't have the new tools, but there already is the select subject. The new tool that's coming is going to be much smarter and allow you to quickly draw a box around what you're interested in. So we could draw a box around this car, and then it would infer from that we want to select a car. But let's just see what happens when we say select subject. I've been pleasantly happy using this most of the time. It looks at the image, it looks at what's in focus, and in this case, it's grabbed both the lighthouse and the car. Now, what I usually do, and Steve, you could chime in, you might have slightly different methods, is I hit the Q tool, which puts you into quick mask mode. You are now painting your selection that you want to get rid of with white. And if you hit X, you switch to black, you're now painting
what to keep.
What to keep. Why isn't it? Why is nothing to, oh, I'm not in the brush tool. It was still sampling. Oh boy, hold on a second. There we go. Back to here, Q tool. I'm in the standard brush. There we go. And black is removing from the selection and white is adding to the selection. So in this case, if we wanted just the car, we could very quickly paint out the top of this and come down and paint over the edge of the car. And then of course, the big tip for Photoshop is zoom in. When you're doing fine detail work.
Sharp that is. That is.
Yeah, it's really sharp.
Shot.
Yeah. And then you can come in here and you can paint much more carefully right along those edges. There are a lot of other tools though that within Photoshop that will help you define and make these selections. So this is just my method. And honestly, I think it's starting to get a little outdated because some of these other tools in here that will help you. But this works for me still, and I've been pretty happy with it. And it's just so easy to go X to switch to erasing, X to switch to painting, just back and forth. When you're done, you hit Q again, and you come back, and now you can see it's got the marching ants based on where I painted. So I'd still need to do a little bit more work in here as well, but it's done a pretty good job. And then you can, within that, you could also do some more additional selections and modify that border as well. But yeah.
Real quickly, I know we've got some other images to get to, but do you want to create a little bit of a canvas over on the right-hand side?
Yep. Yeah, let's do that.
Based on the back of the bumper. So what I'm looking at, the rear bumper ends right by the edge of the frame. And so visually, I always like to have just a little bit more visual breathing room. We've talked about this on the show before. It's just a little bit, it's not quite so stressful to the eye having things end right by the edge of the frame. So what Toby is doing is he's just creating a background canvas slightly wider, probably about, what, an inch?
Yeah, and I usually create more than I need because it's so easy to crop it.
Yeah. And so now he's, created that, and then you fill that space in with, cloning or content-aware fill. And usually I just do a quick selection of the spot. You may have to find the image from a layer to a background image for it to work better, but Photoshop does a really nice job of filling that in.
Let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice.
You're gonna have like chunks of the car in that right off the bumper, probably.
Yeah, it might take some work. And this is also where, Ursula, you might have another shot or two where you shot just a little bit wider, and you can bring those in and just kind of use those as inspirational pieces.
Yeah. So it actually did a pretty nice job. You probably want to go in there and erase any remnants of a straight line that runs up. And then, like Toby said, it's created a little wider than, so you're going to crop in, but you can go in and clean up some of the car stuff that it duplicated in that space. Mm-hmm. It does take some time, but if you can't go back to the original file and have that space to work with, it is worth spending the time. creating a little extra space.
Yeah. I love working in Photoshop Live because it just makes me look so stupid all the time. Like I just wanted to make the shadow end, and I just tried to cheat, and it just looks terrible. Don't look at it.
It always happens when you're working live or trying. Like whenever I do a tutorial on pen or something, I ended up re-recording it about 5 times because, like, no, why isn't Photoshop doing what I practiced?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you've got a little bit of, be careful, watch out for repetition that you just aren't going to get. We have that up there. So you just come in with that clone stamp tool just a little bit to, oh, there we go again. Just to kind of muss it up a little bit up there as well. But yeah, I think that's really nice. I'd pop a little bit more contrast onto the lighthouse, just a teeny tiny bit. Though overall, I think this is a really nice image.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, let's move on because we do have other ones. We've got another from Chris. Ooh, I actually know exactly where this is, Chris. I've been here. This is that old stone church on the on this reservoir, and what a sky!
Can you zoom in on is that an American flag on the church there?
That is American flag on the church. Yeah.
And is it? I was trying to see. Oh yeah, there's a lot of detail there.
Yeah.
My small screen here, it just kind of looked a little blown out, but
yeah.
It's not. Wow, that's cool.
I know we just suggested this with your other image, Chris, but I feel like this also works as a 16:9.
I agree. There's a bright blue spot in the upper right-hand corner of the sky that looks cool on its own, but when you put it in the rest of the picture, it takes your attention away. Once you notice it.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Yeah. And I know now this has kind of created this very split horizon shot, which we usually say use your rule of thirds, but I feel like it works for this reflection. And the reason I decided to is we have just a hint of color up here, but as Steve said, we have this distracting bit. And so the sky kind of stops being interesting at this last stripe. That's how I arrived at that.
Well, and it's also, you look at the reflection, especially if you're going to put the horizon right across the middle, you've got something up in the sky that's not being reflected in the lower portion. So all of a sudden it looks, more asymmetrical. And I think it looks better like this. I think if you put the horizon way down at the base and used mostly the sky, you could show that light blue part and it wouldn't be a problem. But since we're dealing with a reflection, I think put it in the middle is a good call.
Yeah. Now I just threw a quick graduated filter, radial filter over top of this edge of the church. It looked to me a little too yellow. It's picking up too much of those halogen lights there. And so I just cooled it down a little bit and brought the exposure down and the highlights down just to kind of balance that. It's an important part of the story, but I don't want it to be so demanding of our attention.
Well, and when I asked you to zoom in on it, that's kind of, my eye instantly went to it because it was very bright. And obviously that is going to be the focal point of the image, but it was so bright that you started missing some of the other beautiful things that are going on in the picture with the sunset and the trees and stuff like that. I may burn out a lot of that white shoreline that's happening underneath the trees on the right-hand side just to, kind of keep that silhouetted look consistent.
Mm-hmm. We could darken that. Yeah. The other thing I wonder is, what about raising the exposure there? Yeah, there we go. So you could do something like that, or you could, let's see what happens if we throw another graduated radial filter over it and invert so it's inside, and we just really bring that exposure up.
I love what that's doing with the trees. Honestly, I'd probably be in Photoshop and sort of cutting back on the shoreline. They're not that it's ugly or anything. It's just, it's bright in a darker environment, and then brightening up those trees, I think, looks really pretty.
Yeah. So I think it is worth taking out some of those gravel embankment bits there. They do catch the eye, but the trees are gorgeous and overall really, really nice, beautiful reflection. Very cool
shot.
All right, we move on to Kate's shot. She's worked on this a bit. She really likes, the colors around it. She's wondering what to do with the water.
That's a good question.
So this was shot at 1/60th of a second. And, there's just so many different shutter speeds you can use to shoot water. I mean, well, like anything. That's not a brilliant statement. But really try to just decide what you want to show. And slower shutter speeds, like a quarter of a second or 2 seconds. It's going to take some of the energy away from the water and make it look a much more tranquil and kind of peaceful scene. Faster shutter speeds, 1/60th and higher. It's going to show more of this kind of static staccato. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Dude, you're way over my head.
Strobish. It's going to really catch each water droplet in more sharp relief and give you a little bit more sense of the energy that's happening there. So you always have to kind of think about what you want to show in a scene. And I have to be honest, I think 1/60th of a second is a little bit like this in No Man's Land, where it's left it a little bit, has a tiny bit of motion blur, but not enough to make it peaceful.
Yeah, and I would agree with that 100%. Because that is what you're seeing, right? You're not seeing every little droplet captured in the fine detail of the water coming off of the rocks. You're also not seeing this soft, tranquil, sometimes we call that pillowy water.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you call it pillowy water.
So what the result is it looks like the water is blurry.
Yeah.
If you want to soften water, it should be done. You don't want to do it too much because you lose the texture, but you want to do it enough that it looks intentionally softened. That gets the oohs and ahs from the viewer.
Yeah.
If you want to capture the detail of the water, you do a super fast shutter speed where you can see every little droplet. But when you're in that no man's land, as Toby described it, it starts to take on some of the characteristics of blur, and you just need to kind of think about that and be careful with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tricky though, because if you're in a situation like this, I can see I think the midday light here too offers a little bit of a harsher quality that exacerbates this. Mm-hmm. So that's where a circular polarizer can be nice to cut a little bit of that and that little bit of reflection. What I just did was paint it on. I just softened it a little bit more. And
you take some highlight down on it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you take that down. It really can show a little bit more detail. It's almost a way of kind of cheating it.
Yeah. What we have to be careful about, though, it seems, is that some of this is right at the maximum of the camera's capability of capturing, and so it is bright. And as I bring the highlights down, instead of detail kind of starting to show, it just starts to turn a little gray. So we really have to be careful about that. But definitely a little bit of highlight down. And then I'd be curious to see, well, I don't know if we want to add any color cast to it. We could try to make it look a slightly different color if we wanted to. Maybe warm it up a little bit, because we have such nice warm colors in the rocks and the leaves around it as well.
Yeah, sometimes I'll work with the temperature or tint of water. A lot of times, though, what I find I end up doing is actually bringing saturation down on water, because a lot of times there's a blue tint to it, a very cool blue tint. And if I bring that down, it just looks like, kind of white water over these other warmer colors. Because if you have these warmer colors and then you've got this cool water as it's not blue like you'd look at a lake blue, it's just very kind of cool to the eye. It can just look a little odd. So bringing the saturation down tends to soften it up without changing the color too much.
Yeah. And Kate brings up the really good point of she didn't have a tripod here, which certainly limits your shutter speed options.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that being the case, this is about as long as, as long as you want to go.
Yeah.
Once you're stable.
Yep. At 55 millimeters, absolutely. If you have image stabilization in your lens or your body, you may be able to get a little bit less. My tip for that is to shoot a burst. And one of those, when you're down at about 1/4 of a second or 1/10, the slowest eye that I seem to be able to reliably handhold is somewhere about 1/6 or 1/8 of a second, which is often enough to get a little bit of that softness in the water. The other thing you could do is brace on a rock or set it on a rock in some cases. You know, I've come up with some creative composition simply because I forgot my tripod or forgot my plate to my tripod, you know, so there are things like that. But yeah, I think our suggestions help a little bit. And the other thing a circular polarizer would have done here is we see a lot of reflections off the leaves themselves. Just with that kind of, I assume, close to midday sun. And that would have cut that, which allows for that saturation to really pop through, and I think could help that. So a circular polarizer, I think, can be really useful in some situations. It's one of them. All right, we're going to move on. Nikki's got this shot right here of just a fantastic, super macro of a gorilla.
That is so cool.
I feel like you were right next to them, Nikki.
I know. I think Roger Hunt shared a similar gorilla shot somewhere on the Facebook page or somewhere. I've seen it recently, and it just really drew me in. And this, wow, coming in really tight, filling the frame the way she did, I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And you know, I love this. This shot at 8,000. I don't know what camera you used. 8,000 ISO. That's a Canon 6D Mark II, one that, you know, in my review, I said, well, isn't the greatest at high ISO. This looks gorgeous. Yeah, there's some noise back here in this area, but it doesn't matter. The detail is fantastic. So one, don't listen to camera reviewers. Just get out there with whatever you have and shoot. And two, don't be scared of higher ISOs when you need them. You know, this you shot at 300 millimeters. You took a shutter speed to make sure things were sharp. It is. I think I feel like I remember you posted this on Facebook and kind of asked for some tips and advice. I don't know if I have any. I just think this is a great image the way it is right here.
Yeah. I love the way it's processed as a black and white. I may consider punching up just a little bit, maybe with some of the contrast, because he's got all these really cool wrinkles and leathery skin right under the eyes. And it's like, I just want to kind of see the depth of that get almost exaggerated. You know, and you could do that by upping some contrast and stuff in it. But and then I would maybe consider playing around the eyes just slightly. That eye that is away from the camera in the back has a really bright, kind of blown out catch light in it. So I might tone that down, just make it a little bit smaller. I'd have to do this in Photoshop, or I would do this in Photoshop. And then on the front eye, I might mimic that smaller catch light in the eye that's closer to us.
So you take this size and shape of the catch light and try to kind of shrink that one down a bit.
Vice versa, or shrink the other one. And then, you know, you can create a catch light in Photoshop. You can use the brush tool and just use a very soft spread, a blur, and low the opacity, and, you know, don't choose like pure white necessarily, and then just quickly click it on there. And if you don't like it, Command Z, adjust your brush and try it again. And it can look very, very realistic and subtle. But typically, if you kind of match the catch light in the eyes, whichever way you go, whether you match the front one or the rear one, it can just look a little bit more pleasing to the viewer. Mm-hmm. But I'm hesitant to say a lot of that, only because she did a really great job with this, and it's a powerful image, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think it's great. Very nice. And Kevin, we're just going to click on this one and tell you this is another fantastic image. I think you got a lot of great feedback on this in the Facebook group as well.
Oh, I did want to talk something about this image, and I didn't put the comment on there. I know a lot of people are commenting on this. My comment to this image, I don't know if Kev's watching tonight. This is one of the best shots I think he's processed, he's done. I mean, you talk about right place, right time, the right editing. Look at the light is just stunning. It's beautiful. I love this picture so much. I was just going to suggest to him that you can see in the reflection, there's a lot of detail in the trees, and the colors are really kind of vibrant and clear. There's very little being blown out. The highlights are in tone. When you look at the real trees just above it, they're pretty bright. So I just toned down the highlights, Kev, if you watch this, on the trees above the shoreline to match what you see in the reflection. I think you do that. It's subtle, but you do that and it'll just fine tune it to just another level. But I think that this picture is just so cool.
Yep. That's very nice. I think that's a great tip. So we'll say we are done there. And now I can remove that screen. There we are. Back to us. All right. Pen members, thank you so much for submitting your images. I hope you found our advice useful and the Lightroom tips and tricks for everybody. If you'd like to submit images for future mishmashes, you just have to join Pen, and you can find a link to do that. It's posted usually on Tuesdays to remind you, but the link stays the same every week. So you can just bookmark it and say, hey, let me just send this in. Right now, if you're a Pen member and you're thinking, oh, I should send an image, go find one while you're listening to us talk, submit it. It will be there for next week. It doesn't have to be on the Tuesday before the show. I'm capable of saying, hey, I haven't seen that image yet. Let me save it to next week. I can usually do that. So,
That's a lot better than I can do.
Yeah. And Kevin's saying he might print that one. Definitely you should print that one, Kevin. Yeah. That's a great picture. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Let's just hit on a couple more things. One, I want to talk about the Pixel Astrophotography mode. So I do want to share a screen still. Let's see. I have to bring up my photo so everybody sees it. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw this picture already. I took the Pixel out for astrophotography, and the best one I have is this one here. So I'm going to stop sharing screen, share screen again. Give me just a sec. There it is. We can minimize the info. Pretty impressed with this. You can see some good detail, very little noise. And when you think about the size of this sensor and the fact, let's go back to our info for a second. This is, well, it says it's a 16-second shot, but it's lying. It's actually a 4-minute shot. Here's how it works. It's pretty amazing. You set it up on a tripod. I love the Mi Photo Sidekick Plus, that just holds it rock steady. When it determines that it's rock steady and you put it into its night shot mode, that was kind of made famous with the Pixel 3. This is low light level that just does a fantastic job. Basically what it does is it takes a whole lot of images really quickly, and then it stacks them all together and kind of makes a decision about what's noise from image to image and gets rid of it. There are computer programs that we can use, and Photoshop can do this. There are specific ones for starry night skies that help you kind of develop a starry night sky picture, but it does it all in camera. So when it determines that it's rock steady, it starts a 4-minute exposure, and it counts down on the screen. It says, hey, I'm now in astrophotography mode, taking a picture, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 59 seconds. And I thought, wow, man, that's kind of crazy. And then it tells you can stop it at any time, but the longer you let it go, the better it will get. And what happens is about 16 seconds in, you get the first glimpse of your resulting picture that you see here on the screen. So it's like, okay. So it's pretty cool because it might not be great at that point, but it's good enough for you to say, hey, my composition is great, or I need to adjust it a little bit, or, and that's oftentimes I had it a little crooked at first, and, things weren't lined up so well. And then it just gets better and better and better, and you can stop it at any time. So it's actually, this picture you're looking at is actually a 4-minute exposure. Now, some of you might think, well, how come the stars aren't trails? Aren't you limited like 20 or 30 seconds before the stars start to trail? That's where this crap gets pretty impressive. I was gonna say the S word, but I wanted to censor myself for the kids. It breaks the scene up. My friend Arishi at DP Review commented, I put this on Facebook too, and he said, here's how they do it. Because I said, why aren't there star trails? It breaks the scene up into thousands of tiny little images that it's looking at. And it can decide in its little camera brain, its little phone brain, what is sky and what is landscape. And then it watches that sky and says, I need to keep these stars. Basically, I need to keep these stars in the same spot from shot to shot to shot. So it is stacking and aligning all of the stuff in camera. That's pretty cool. So
did you see that article on Petapixel about the guy who used the iPhone 11 Pro and he captured the aurora?
No, I'm really excited to take this to Alaska next in a month, basically, to do that. How did it look? Look good?
Oh, it looked amazing. I mean, it didn't look as good as when we're on tripods and we're shooting raw and we process the image. But the fact that he used an iPhone, he used the night mode, and it was a 3-second shot. It looks here. I'll link the. I was looking at that when you showed this because I was like, I just read an article about something.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, you can tell I'm excited. The technology in here is really, really cool. But as I teased early on, no, that doesn't mean you should run out and buy this because one, the iPhone does it just as good, if not better, in some situations for low light shots. Two, I'm disappointed in the fact that it is this completely automated, boom, you're automatically taking a 4-minute exposure, except you could stop it, if you want sooner. Why can't I have shutter speed control? The LG G4 gave me that like 4 or 5 years ago, and other cameras give you that. Now I might be able to install a third party that will give me some shutter speed control, but come on, let me have a pro mode that does that. If this camera is so smart, I was trying to install the Moment camera actually just to see because I was wondering if that gave it. So that's disappointing. And the fact that overall, as I already talked about last week, that this is a nice phone. I think it's the best pure Android experience out there, but I don't think it's that much better if you're using a Pixel 3, 3A, that it's worth upgrading to. If you're using a 2, then maybe. But here's the other cool thing. One, Google is going to port the software to Pixel 3, 3A users. So if you have it, you will get this astrophotography mode. If you're a Pixel 2, and I even saw, I think, 1, there's the Open Camera app. Somebody else has, manipulated the little bits behind the scene, and they're going to allow you to side load it, and then you'll have this. And will it be as good because you got slightly older sensors, slightly older technology? Probably not, but it's still going to be pretty cool.
That's cool. They're giving it to the older models.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that's Google, part of that's the fact that just all that stuff is so much more hackable than stuff on the iOS side where it's pretty tightly controlled. So that's cool. But overall, I'm still kind of lukewarm about this phone. But that technology is neat. And imagine that being built into our cameras with gigantic sensors. Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. I just wanted to hold on real quick. Did you send me that link somewhere, Steve?
I copied and pasted the link in the chat. So I don't think it's clickable there. You'll have to copy and paste it in your browser. But it's a pretty. I usually read Petapixel each morning as part of my news, and I think this was on a couple of days ago, and I was just kind of blown away.
This it?
Yep.
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, Steve, you and I are not telling people to go out there, leave your cameras at home. But for so many people who don't have a better camera, don't plan on getting one anytime soon. I have good friends that went to Iceland 2 years ago, and they had their cell phone was the only camera they took with them. Yeah. I mean, this is pretty awesome for those people.
It's really incredible what cell phones are able to do now with their camera systems. Everybody seems to talk about it as like a replacement for your DSLR or your mirrorless or your thousands of dollars of professional gear. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. What I see it as a great complementary product. I see it as an ability to take a good camera with you virtually wherever you are. And we say it all the time, like the best camera is the one you got with you. If you find yourself in a place and you don't have your gear, these cell phones are they're pretty awesome. And you should learn how to use some of these modes within the newer phones if you get one. I'm constantly impressed with what they're able to do. They're not going to take my good gear out of my bag anytime soon, especially when we talk about blowing pictures up large. in format. I mean, it's just a sensor size. You're not going to escape that. The sensor in your phone is always going to be tiny compared to 35 millimeter or a medium format or something like that. And as a result, you're just going to have better images, especially shooting raw. But these phones are super impressive, and the software's ability to fix our shortcomings is really interesting. Like you talked about with the, thousands of tiny little pictures to stitch that together and avoid star blur. That's just incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, that's cool. And Kevin says, for the times I'm not carrying my DSLR, I want a nice camera phone.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great way to put it. You don't have your good stuff with you. It's nice to have a really good camera phone.
Yeah. Shutter speed. So I'm in the Camera of the Moment app, and yeah, the longest it will let me get is 1/4 of a second still. I'm not sure what I'm showing you all. The longest it will get is 1/4 of a second. So even though it can do 16 seconds in that night shot mode, the API limits. And that's annoying, Google. Let us do at least 16 seconds. I can take my pillowy water pictures if I want. Yeah. All right, this show's going along. Let's answer a couple of quick questions, and then we're going to wrap up. Adam has a question for Sony APS-C users. His girlfriend has the Sony a6400, nice camera, with the 18-135 kit. They're thinking about picking up for her for Christmas a budget ultra-wide for astrophotography and landscapes, or an external flash. Hoping to keep it to a few $100 US range. Could you suggest something?
A budget wide lens or an external flash are the two options?
Yes.
Huh.
So quite different. I mean, how often is your girlfriend photographing inside? If it's fairly often, like birthday parties, fun events, I don't know, whatever else you crazy kids do these days. Adam actually has got a fantastic.
Let's go TikTokers.
TikTokers. An external flash can be fantastic in those. That really changed my photography when my kids were little. I was trying to get better pictures of them. I had a DSLR. I was kind of frustrated because inside pictures were still noisy and grainy. And I'm like, I spent all this money for this big sensor. And I mean, the truth is still, when it's lower light, it doesn't really matter how big your sensor is until you get to medium format, like Mr. Medium Format over there.
What?
A flash can be really nice, but if you want to take some nice trips out to the hills, to the mountains, and take pretty pictures of the stars, night sky, and some landscape, then a wide angle can be really good. And the little Rokinon, there's I think a 14 f2 or a 12 f2 or f2.8 for Sony mount that would be fantastic. Very, very affordable. Manual focus only, which is kind of limiting during the day. It's not always so fun to work with manual focus lens.
Version of that one. I know some of their lenses they've started doing that.
They do for full frame. I don't think they do at this moment for the APS-C. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Any other suggestions, chat, throw in there if you think, or if anybody's watching this after the fact, throw a comment down below and I'll pass it along to Adam. Andrew asks, state lands. Maybe I'm mistaken, but isn't that a public property paid for by taxpayers? How is it that they can get away with requiring permits for taking photos to sell? Also, I know some people have been kicked out for not having a permit for personal use. Tobias Gelson, he tagged me. This is a question over from our community. Andrew, I answered this in the community. I don't think you saw it yet because I just answered it right before the show. I've never heard of anybody really being hassled on like state park lands or for personal shooting. I'm sure it happens out there somewhere. The best defense against stuff like that is to walk around with that photographer's rights placard, the little PDF cheat sheet. I linked to it. If you're watching this and you're interested in it, in the show notes, the link will take you to the link to that PDF. It's called the photographer's rights. And I think what happens so often with the hassling is the police or the security just don't quite know. And you can try to nicely explain, especially through one of those things. I know that doesn't always help in all situations. Some of those guys are on power trips. Some of them just really feel like their job is to keep this place safe, and you taking a picture of something nearby, maybe nuclear power plant or something, makes them nervous. I don't know. But as far as like in a state park or on a public land, I'm part of a lot of wedding groups and forums. There's a lot of engagement photos that happens in all of those locations, and I really haven't heard of too many issues. There are some places that require permits for commercial shooting, and usually those are like $10 or $15, and they might limit the time of day you can come in, and that's really to kind of balance, you know, your use of the place with all of the other people that want to come in and enjoy it. So I'm not sure what specifics you've heard of or have run into, but in my experience, it's one of those things. I think maybe social media has blown up a little bit more, although maybe I'd feel differently if I had ever been hassled and chased out of a spot, especially when I was working with clients. And then as far as permit for personal use, no, I've never heard of that as a thing. That sounds like something somebody made up who doesn't know what they're talking about. I can't see how that's a thing. There are some buildings that are copyrighted. Like I have a really nice picture of the Eiffel Tower with its light show at night. I'm not allowed to sell that. I'm also not allowed to sell photos of downtown Seattle where the needle is prominently featured, the Space Needle. Those are copyrighted works. It's a little silly, but you know, that's the rules. You got anything to add to that, Steve? Sorry, I talked too much there.
Oh, no, I wanted to hear what you had to say, because you've done a lot more wedding and portraiture work than I have in various locations. So I was kind of in the dark on how to answer that question. So defer to you.
Okay.
But I will say that, you know, I mean, we're in and out of national parks, state parks, you name it, protected lands all the time. And, you know, I've never really seen any issues.
Yeah, we're always permitted because we are running tours, but I don't think we've ever been asked. I think David has once or twice, but we've never been asked to show our permit.
Yeah. I think Acadia was pretty strict, but they were fine once we had everything we needed. And you had that run-in with that one guy. I don't know who that was, but
he assumed I wasn't permitted. But
yeah, that was just a disgruntled photographer. So, but yeah, we've never seen any real problems out there.
Kyle's got a great question that I had no idea. If you decide later you want to sell prints of a shot that you made, can you buy a permit retroactively? Well, see, this is still the thing. No one's going to come after you. I'm selling prints from inside national parks. You know, I'm not allowed to give legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I think I have to say that. But you don't need a permit now to go sell any pretty pictures you took inside a park. Until somebody tells you otherwise. Right?
I'm the fifth.
Yeah, that's probably smart, but I just don't think that's really a thing. Maybe if you put a book together and called it the 50 beautiful national parks that I visited this year or something like that, then the national park system might be like, hey, you got our name in the title and you got a bunch of pictures. Did you have permits? But there are so many pictures out there from national parks, from photographers I know that we're not commercially permitted. It's really about filming video with a crew, as Roy pointed out, in some of the Michigan state parks where they start to get hot and bothered. And again, that's for them to balance that. I understand that. So
sorry, I disappeared on you for a second. Ollie was scratching at the door. I thought she'd come in and say hi to the viewers, but then I went to go get her and she ran away. She wants to play.
That would just make us have a disgruntled comment, because there was a comment on last week's show that said I was really one of those sad individuals for having my dog on with me. Couldn't I go 20 minutes without my dog? I was probably one of those people that pretended that my dog was a service dog and, went in stores with. Well, I wish Archer was around, because dumb, he's only got one eye. Yeah, right. He's my seeing eye dog.
Oh man!
So
watching, if you stay through another hour and a half long show, you'll notice that there's no dogs on here. You doofus.
People, it's funny. It made me laugh. I do want to make a little video, read the comment because it's so mean, and then show my dog and say like, yeah, he's my seeing eye dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it a serious comment? I mean, some people make the lamest comments on videos that.
It didn't seem tongue in cheek. It seemed just like you really are a loser for having your dog.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good. Glad you wasted, 30 seconds of our time with that.
This battery here weighs almost 250 grams. I'm excited to get that new Mavic. I'm going to not cancel my pre-order because I'm a dummy and I like to pretend my bank account is full of ones and zeros.
You can't cancel that because I need to live vicariously through you on these tours from time to time. And I really want to see that thing. I'm very, very tempted to get it. I don't know. I've been talking about a stupid drone for so many years and I've never pulled the trigger. And now I, want to buy a point and shoot. So who knows?
Yeah, I know. We all got our lists.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will be back next week. Same time, same place. So please join us. I'll get that show up soon so you can set a little reminder. PEN members, thank you so much for your support and your membership. And thank you for joining us. And if you're not, consider it. At the very least, if you're watching the show this long for us to dibble dabble about dogs and things like that, give the show a thumbs up. Thank you so much. And Steve, thank you for hanging out with us on this Wednesday evening.
My pleasure. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye, everybody. Till next time.